Hello and welcome to another lesson in our Python programming. And in this lesson, we shall be dealing with our second desktop application, and that is Python text-to-speech application. So let's just dive right into it. I've created one, so we're going to test it and see how it works. From there, we proceed and begin how to create it. So let me just launch it from here. So inside here, you just type whatever you want it to speak or to read it out for you. So you can say something like, I love programming. Then when you just click on it, then it speaks for you. You can give it whatever sentence, whatever alphabet, even a paragraph or whatever, it will still read it for you. So that is what we shall be creating. Let me quickly change my mouse for to speed. Good. Now let's just dive right into the creation of ours. So to start with, we create a folder on the desktop and we can name it up to or whatever. First one was up 1, so you can make it up 2. Double click to open it, right click and choose text documents. You can name it to whatever you want. Text to speech, something like that. Then you change the extension to .py. Twice, changes to Python file. You just launch your text editor, come to file, come to open, and you just go to desktop. And you have your app2 here. Inside the app2 folder, you have the file here. Click on OK, so it's now open. To make sure everything is up and running, let's try printing something in the console. So we say hello world. Now, before we run it, we have to come to run here. Come to run, then click on this. Then we have it displayed here for us. Let's go and confirm its presence in our text file. Right click on it, go to open, edit with this, and then go. It means everything is set and up and running. We can begin writing our codes. So come back here, clear this. So here we're going to be using the TK inter module. So we're going to import TK inter as TK. From there we proceed and import everything from TK inter. Then finally we import the Python text-to-speech module as well, which you haven't yet installed. And then now, after giving you the name as usual, you know how to install it. You just go to the terminal here, down here, and then you do the installation. It's easy, it doesn't have any issues. So basically that is that. So we start with import TK inter as TK. Then the second thing, we are going to import everything from, so we say from. To import everything from a particular module, we use the from, then the name of the module from TK inter. We want to import everything, then you say import, then you bring the asterisk here, like this, import stop. So basically that is that. Now the third module is going to be Python text-to-speech. So we have PyTT SX3, so just auto-complete it. So we are done importing our module. So this is the one you don't have, you haven't yet installed it. So you just come to your terminal, pip install this, and then you do that. So basically that is that. Now let's proceed and continue. Here we're going to define a variable, name it engine, so something like this, engine. Then we assign it to the Python text-to-speech, what they call it, module. Then we initialize it dot init. Like this. So basically that is that. So to start with, we're going to create a class. Now we haven't done classes in our program because we haven't included it. So what classes do is we use classes to write real world programs. So like if you want to write something about human being, maybe real object like mobile phone, like laptops, we use classes because things like mobile phone, laptops, water bottle, whatever, they have some attributes. So to be able to get their attributes, we use classes. So we haven't done that. So if you want to explore, you can read more about classes on Python, and then you'll be good to go. So when we define a class, then we call on the TK inter widget. So with the TK inter widget, then inside it we define a function and then initialize it to the self. That is the first attribute of the widget. So anytime we want to call on any of the the widget include the window itself that we're going to start with. Then we have the text entry widget where the text is going to be typed inside, the button widget, the colors and everything. So these are the attributes of the TK Inter widget we're going to be using from this particular class. So define a class, and we give it a name widget, like this, widget, goes on open parenthesis like this. So inside the class we define a function, we call on def, then space, then underscore, then we initialize it, just press enter and then it auto completes. So from here we begin calling on the attributes. So to call on any of the attribute we use the self dot, so we say self dot root, dot root. So self dot root, then this one we assign it equal to the TK, that is the TK Inter, then dot TK in capital, then open this. So we have just started creating our window. So this is the beginning of our window. So we need to now write the code for the end. So with the end we call on the self dot root once again, dot, then we call on the main loop, then open and close parenthesis. So for now the program wouldn't run, so we have to then make a decision before the program begin running. So we say if, and I'll be explaining this particular line of code and then what it does. If, say if name, like this, sorry, if name equal to, then you bring your inverted commas, then then underscore, go to main, then underscore again, then you terminate it. Then we want to set widget, so we say widget, our widget class is equal to a variable widget, then we assign it to our widget class like this. So basically that is that. Now let's run it before I can explain. So when we run it like this, we should have our window popping up for us. For now it's like, let me see something here, run it once again. Okay, let me just go. So this is what I'm missing here. So after the widget, then you just close it. So let's run it and see. Oh, there's still an error somewhere. Let me see. Error is on line 11. What is the problem? Self.root, sorry, the root is not complete. Good. So we now have our little window here. You can see that these lines of codes for initializing this window is different from the previous one. Like I said, we are using the TK Inter widget class. So inside it, this is the simplest way to use the TK Inter to create an app like this. So when you begin learning the TK Inter, as I said, you understand everything inside it. So basically that is that. Now what is happening here is this, with the this line of code, what we say, if name is equal to main or equal main, then widget is equal to what widget. What happened is that before executing the codes, Python interpreter reads the source file, this particular source file. It reads it and defines some few special variables which we don't see. A lot of things happen in the background, right? And if the Python interpreter is running that module, that is a source file, this particular file we have created in the folder, is if it's running it as the main program, and in this case we are running our own file that we have created in the folder here as the main program. So if it's running it as the main program, as in our case, then it then sets the special name variable to what? To have a value called the main here, to have a value called the main. So that is that. But if the file is imported from another module, just as we have imported, then it will set that what module name to this particular main here. So that is what it does. When you begin learning the TK Inter, you understand all this better. I don't want to go deep into this. So basically that is that. So let's then proceed. Now our window, small window, is up and running here. Let me just run it once again. So now let's see how we can then give it a title. After giving it a title, then we then go ahead and then see how we can set the background color. Then we disable the maximize and then minimize button here or whatever. And then after that, we give it a default size. So these are the three things we're going to do. So let's begin doing that. Now the first thing is, before, like I said, before you call on any of the attribute, now everything must be inside this particular loop here, so that it can make the program run, for us to run it several times without it stopping. So that it should be in a loop, right? So that is that. So we go ahead and call on the title class. So we say self dot root dot title. then we inside the parenthesis, then we give it a title. So we can say, so I want it to be in capital. So I say text to speech. You can give it whatever name you want. It should be a string, right? So now if we should run this, we have the title here like this, something like this, text to speech. So let's just close this. Now the next thing is, let's see how we can configure the background color. So before we do that, we call on the self again, call on the self dot root, then dot configure, then we use the configure, then inside the parenthesis, then we call on the background, that is the BG for short, then equal to, then we call on our color. In this case, I want it to be what? White. So it should be a string. So automatically it's already white, so we can't see. So now that is that. So let's stop it now. Now the next thing we are going to add is what? To make sure that you don't maximize it, or maybe you don't make it bigger, make it small. We want to give it a default size. So that is that. Let's do that. So to do that, we still call on self dot we call it resizable, self dot root dot resizable, then we set it to false. So to start with, we set the height like this, then you set it to false, then comma, then with the width as well, then we also set it to what? False. So that is that. Now if you run this, you see that will be disabled. It means you can't maximize it or whatever. So that is that. So now let's go ahead and then give it the default size that we want. So we say self dot roots dot geometry. So this will give us then inside the parenthesis, then you define your default size. I want it to be 500. Let's say 500 by 150. So basically that is that. You can give it to any of the sizes you want. After that, run it and see. Let's run it and see. So this is the size I've just defined it to. So 500 by 150. If I want to make it 500 by 200 too, I can still do that. So let's just check and see. 500 by 200. So then we can then go ahead and run it again. See, that is a bit bigger than the previous, so I think this looks cool. So let's maintain it that way. So now the next thing we are going to do is, now we add some instruction and also create our text entry widget. So we're going to add some instruction inside here. So here, maybe some instruction at the top here, which asks like, what do you want me to speak, or what do you want me to read, or what do you want me to say, something like that, right? So let's go ahead and then execute that. So to do that, we call on the label class. So we say self dot label label one, something like this. Then we assign it to tk.label. So and equal to tk.label. It should be in capital .label, tk.label, then into brackets, then we then root it, then we give our label. So we say self dot root, then you just bring your comma, then the text you want to use as your label, then is equal to, this should be a string. So you say, what do you want me to speak? So something like that. Do you want me to speak? Then a question sign here. So basically that is that. Then after that, we want to maybe give it a font, right? Define a font for that. So we say font is equal to this should be outside this. Then comma, then say font is equal to, as usual, my default font, so railway, something like this. So let's run it and see what's going to happen here. Oh, this didn't appear. Okay, we have to pack it first before it appears. So we call on the self.label.pack. So we say self.label one dot self.label1.pack, like this. Then you close and open your parenthesis. Now we run it, we should have it inside here. So good, we have something like this. So what do you want me to speak? So this is our basic instruction here. So now the next thing we are going to do is create the entry widget where we are going to enter our text or whatever. So that is what we're going to be creating now. So let's go ahead and then execute that. So to do that, we call on the self.entry class. So we say self.entry, then we assign it to self.entry, then we assign it equal to tk.entry, tk.entry is equal self.entry equal to a minute please, self.entry equal to tk.entry, then into brackets, then we root it. So okay, so I think this should be like this for now. So before we do anything at all, let's just pack it first. So we say self.entry.pack, something like this. Now we can go ahead and define some parameters here, but before we do that, let's run it and see what is happening. So we have our entry widget here. As it stands now, this is the default entry widget here. We haven't yet given it any properties or maybe any parameters to maybe increase its size, its length, its width or whatever. We haven't done that yet. So let's go ahead and do that. So now to start with, let's begin with the width of it. So let's see. So before we we call on self.root, then comma, then we give it a width, then we assign it to maybe something like maybe 80. So let's run it and see. So you can see that it's a bit longer than previous, right? So that is, so you can give it to any of this thing you want. So inside here we have to, now as you can see that it's too closer to the text here. We would want it to come down a bit and also define some paddings here and there. So let's go ahead and do that. So we define some parameters here to take care of that. So we call on the padding x, then we assign it to 10. Then we call on the padding y as well, then we assign that one to also 10. So now we should run it. You can see that it has dropped down a bit, and it's not too closer to the instruction at the top there again. So here we can write our text inside here, and then from there we go ahead and then click on the button, then it goes ahead and speak for us whatever we want, and basically that is that. Now let's proceed. Now the next thing we are going to do is to create our button now, right? So let's go ahead and create our button. So let's quickly look at that. So to start with, we call on the button class, right? We call on the button class. So to start with, so we say self.button equal to tk.button, then into brackets. Now, but before anything at all, let's pack it first. So we say self.button.pack. Then here, for now, we are not going to define any parameters, but before anything, let's run it and see what's going to happen. So we now have our button here, but for now this is the default button, right? It's too small. I just want you to see the default of it. That is why I haven't defined any parameters or properties for it. So this is the button. For now it's too small, so let's go ahead and see how we can make it a bit better than this. So inside here we are going to give it some properties, right? So before we start, we call on the self.root, then comma, then the text we want to be on the button is something like speak, right? It should be a string, so we say speak, and then speak, something like this. then comma. Then the next thing is we want to define width for the button. The width of it is equal to something like, let's say 8, and then the height of it, so height of it should be equal to something like 1, then comma, then the background. Okay, let's go ahead and run this before. So our button is now a bit bigger compared to the previous one, right? So it's now bigger than this. So let's proceed and go ahead. Now let's stop it and proceed. Now the next thing is, let's give it a background color, something like so we call on the BG, so BG, this is equal to, we give it black, but with the black you can see that it will just, our text will disappear. So we can't see our text, so let's deal with that. So to do that, we call on the foreground, this is equal to, then we give it something like strings of white. Yeah, so basically that is that. So let's run it now and see. So we have this good. So let's stop it. Now the next thing we are going to do is let's change the font, right? So let's use the Railway. My favorite font is equal to Railway. Let's run it now and see. So you can see that it has made our button a bit bigger and then nicer than before. So basically that is that. For now, we can all see that our button has no functionalities for now. It's not functioning as we expected. So let's deal with that. So let's stop it for now. So let's proceed. So we are going to create two functions, right? So let's just close this to make sure that the function and then so space here. Now we are going to create two functions. One of the for our button. One is for the button, and the other one is for the speaking of our text. Now the function should be outside the loop here. It should be somewhere here. It shouldn't be inside the loop. That is why I decided to close this. So we are now done with this. So let's go ahead and begin creating our function, right? So let's go ahead and check it out. Now the first function is going to be that of the what? The speaking of the text. So now let's make sure that it's indented with the first function here. So we call on the definition keyword. Then we give our function a name, say speak, then into bracket. Then we define some what is the name? Argument. Some parameters for it. Self, then comma. Then we give it something like texts. We want it to speak our text, right? So basically that is that. Now inside our Python text to speech, what do you call it? Module, we define a variable called engine, right? So we want to call this engine variable. Then we call the say class from that particular Python text to speech. So we say engine dot say. Then inside the brackets, what do we want it to say? We want it to say the text we type inside the text widget. So basically that is what we are doing here. Then the next thing is this. We're going to call the engine variable again. So we call on the engine. Then we call on one of the classes again from the Python text speed. That is what? Run and wait. We call it run and wait. Run and wait. Then when you begin typing, it pops up. So the moment you click on the button, it will run and be waiting, and then it will finish reading the text before the button comes back again. Like if you click on it, it goes inside and read the text inside the widget, then after that it comes back. So basically that is what is going on here. So we are done creating that of the speaking. Now let's go ahead and begin with that of the button now. So before we do, let's call on the def function, the def keyword again. Then we give it a name like click or clicked. Then we define this thing for it, then self this thing for it. So now we are going to call on our text variable from here. So whatever text we write is going to be what? Stored inside this particular text here, right? So let's call it text. Then it's equal to and you say self dot entry dot gets something like this. So whatever text we enter into the widget is going to be installed here and then finally be taken. So when it is taken, what is going to happen to it is this. We're going to call on the self dot speak. Then inside here, we want it to speak what? Our text, right? So see text variable. So that is that. So I think we are done creating our function. So even with this, if we should run our codes, it's still there. It wouldn't make any difference. So let's run it and see. So even if we should type something here, it wouldn't say it for us to hear or whatever, unless we route it to our button, right? So let's go ahead and then execute that. So to do that, we come inside here. There's a minute. Sorry. We come inside here and define a variable called command. Then we assign it to self dot clicked like this, but do away with the what they call it, the parentheses. So we have just routed it to our button now. Now our function should be up and running. So if we should click this, it should wait. But for now, it's not waiting because there is nothing in the what they call it, the entry widget. So let's try typing something. Let's try typing something like what we say. So I love Python programming, right? Love Python programming. So let's click on this.
I love Python programming.
Good. So our app is working and then up and running. You can see very easy to code. It's not difficult, right? The sweetest thing is this: if you are done learning TK Inter, that is when you will enjoy Python better. So I think
I love Python programming.
Up and running.
I love Python programming.
You can see that if it's running, the button is what?
I love Python
you see
programming.
that it remains inside. Just observe it until it finishes. So that is a function of what? Engine.run and wait. It should be running and be waiting until it finishes reading all the text in the widget. So you can just go and copy something from somewhere and come and paste it inside here. It will read it for you, right? You can just go and copy even your national anthem and paste it inside. It will just read everything for you like that. So that is that. If you can even write alphabet like something like this. Let's see. A, comma space B, comma space C, comma space D, comma space E, comma space F, comma space G, comma space H, comma space I, comma space J, comma space K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. So let's run it and see something.
A, B, C, D.
So you can it's reading the alphabet. So you can see that the button is inside. So it will finish before it comes out.
U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Good. So imagine as a class teacher, after taking your kids through basic programming techniques as we started, you create something like this and then you come and install it. You make it executable, which we are yet to learn. Then you come and install it on your lab computers. Then they come into the lab and then they begin to use it. Imagine how you feel as the teacher who developed it. This is very sweet, right? So I think we'll end our lesson here and see how we can deal with the next lesson, which either maybe chatbot or a web browser, any of these two. A chatbot, those who are part of our free programming we dealt with on Scratch programming. You remember we dealt with a particular program we call chatbot, right? But that's why we were using what? The visual programming language, that is the Scratch, where we were dragging the blocks, snapping them and doing whatever. Here we are going to write the codes ourselves, okay? We're going to write the codes and try to create our own chatbot, give it our own instructions, try to interact with it. It's very interesting. So until then, say, but before anything at all, let's stop this. You come to File, and make sure you click on Save All. This will be saved into your folder. Save All, so like this. So we can then can close this. Can even go ahead and close this. Can exit it. Then after that, let's double click to open this. Right click it, and then you go to this, and then you can see that everything is inside it. Now if you should run it like this, you should have it pop up here. So this is it. For now, we haven't made it executable. So we say thank you. So we run it.
Thank you.
Good. So our program is working. So the next thing, what we are going to do is to make sure we make it what? Executable. So this is the file we're going to make executable. So that is that. So till our next lesson, I say thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.